Tonight on the Real News Syria Update, we have special guests in the studio from freebarrettbrown.org and your weekly cancer cocktail that's coming up. Welcome to the Real News. My name's Andrea, and you're listening to Occupy Boston Radio, radio for the 99%, home of the horizontal democracy. We have a couple of special guests here in the studio for you tonight. Kate Morrigan and Lauren Pepsia from freebarrettbrown.org. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do over there?
Well, Barrett Brown is an American journalist who is currently facing 105 years. The bulk of the charges are related to linking to a pastebin the link had already been published over 800 times before he posted it.
Yeah.
He was involved in a lot of activism related to uncovering ties between private security firms and the government. And what's really interesting is a lot of the stuff that has been coming out through Edward Snowden has been backing up all of the stuff that he was doing research into at the time.
Mm-hmm. So one of the groups he ran or sort of founded was Project PM, which was a crowdsourced investigative journalism group that I was actually part of that would go through all sorts of, documents that have been released, whether they were from hacked sources or just other open sources. And try to find out what technologies these surveillance contractors had and what kind of laws they were breaking when they were spying on people, and just basically compile a wiki of information that we would all edit. And a lot of journalists cited it when they were talking about surveillance contractors. We'd try to, when we found something big going on, we'd try to share it with certain people in the press so that they would draw attention to
information sharing, like the Associated Press.
Yeah, it's a news organization, basically. News gathering organization.
Yeah, that was the video, right? One of the videos of the people being shot.
That was WikiLeaks. That was Private Manning releasing that. That was not related to this.
Isn't that one of the links that Barrett Brown posted?
That isn't one of the links that's associated with the charges. The charges stem from the Stratfor hack. Stratfor is a private intelligence firm that was working, again, with the government. And there was a hacking group, LulzSec, that broke into it.
Wow. And
Jeremy Hammond was one of the people who was charged associated with that, and he's facing jail time, but not as much as Barrett, surprisingly enough. And they contacted WikiLeaks to release the data to WikiLeaks, and there's rumors that initially Sabu, who was one of the people from LulzSec, was going to ask WikiLeaks for money, was going to ask Julian Assange for money for that information, and Jeremy Hammond just handed it over because you don't do that. You don't get money for your leaks. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but very close to that regarding whether, the government is really pissed off because they had this great sting in place where their agent, who was Sabu, was telling people to break into this company and get this information into his hands and make him pay for the stolen data so they would finally have a case against Julian Assange.
Right.
So when that hack happened, they came down really hard on Jeremy Hammond. And they came down really hard on Barrett, who was just reporting on that hack, who had just posted a link to the dumped data from that hack. Wow. He wasn't in any way involved in breaking into the servers.
Yeah, in fact, it was, the whole thing was an entrapment operation in the first place. That's, people have to remember, this wasn't LulzSec started as not an FBI entrapment operation, but Sabu, who was sort of the leader, turned and then just started setting up more and more, criminal hacks in order to entrap people that is high-value targets from the government. And Barrett's the fallout of that, one of the fallout of that. And Barrett and his mother, actually.
Kind of like the fall guy.
Yeah, basically. Well, they didn't like the fact that Barrett was exposing all the illegality that these surveillance contractors are doing. And, he was on their list of people to, shut up, basically. They wanted him to shut up.
I've heard about the U.S. government doing more kind of setups like this, where they get set up they'll have, some special agent follow around some guy who they want to incriminate as a terrorist, and they'll be like, oh, well, this is how you get the bombs, and
Yep.
here, and this is, talk to this guy, and this is what you should do. I remember specifically that being in USA Today, like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That is very similar to some of what happened with Lulzsec. Initially, we believe, we can't tell for sure, but Sabu was one of the early members of Lulzsec, and he was raided and then immediately began cooperating with them, and he was very vocal about getting people to go out and do more illegal things, and anytime somebody had any sort of qualms about what they were going to attack, he was one of the very loud voices saying, no, go after this and go do this.
I'm hearing things about possibly bringing up charges against Glenn Greenwald.
Well, it does
That'd
keep with the
suck.
war on journalism. That is definitely...
Yeah, it seems like it's becoming more and more prevalent, where it was just one person before, now it's...
I mean, he's in Brazil, so
He's
a
in much
little
less
he's a little
danger.
safer. I mean, he's not safe from a drone, but he's safer from, I think, charges like that. And they've already gone after, what was the guy at Fox? They went after a guy at Fox and AP. They were they were like investigating them for. I guess it was. I don't remember exactly the case, but it was part of this general war on journalism that's going on. I don't know. Maybe somebody should look that up. But, I hopefully. I mean, they went after Glenn Greenwald's boyfriend or
Husband.
husband.
Fox. I don't know. Look, trying not to find it, but...
I think I know where I can find it. We can find the guy.
Yeah, no, but Brazil, they came out with their surveillance is becoming just as bad as ours. I think the only thing that would make Glenn Greenwald safer would be that their police are less militarized.
What's really interesting about Brazil is it's one of the places in the world that has the most, I guess, members, but that's not a great word, but people who are participating in Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's
a lot of
really
Brazilian
interesting
anons.
that
Oh.
Glenn Greenwald wound up there.
Chose that for surveillance. Yeah, definitely.
They were heavily involved in the protests related to the fare hikes on the buses over the last couple of years.
So justice.
Yeah, and also the World Cup, right? A lot of the World Cup gentrification that's happening. Right?
Yes.
And all the money being spent on the World Cup that should be spent on people's food and the poor. Oh well.
But I think it has a lot to do with just criminalization and the for-profit prison system as well. The more people get arrested, the more the money that they make.
Absolutely. One of the things that we did want to talk about with Barrett's case is just how expensive his defense is. Even though he already has pro bono lawyers, he still has expenses associated with it, and he needs to be able to get expert testimony and independent forensics analysis on his computer so that he can fight the charges against the government. And the actual amount that he needs is about $250,000 to fight these charges when he didn't do anything violent. Nobody's even accused him of doing anything violent.
And that's just for forensics and an expert witness.
Yeah, that's not even counting all the time that the lawyers are putting into it.
You're charging hourly.
Unfortunately, you cannot get experts for free.
That's true.
If people want to donate, they should go to freebarrettbrown.org/donate.
There's a National Lawyers Guild. There are foundations set up, but those only have so much funding too. It's tough,
And
it's scary for people like me who kind of participate in investigatory journalism. I might not be as far advanced as people like Glenn Greenwald and Barrett Brown, but
it should be frightening to people. If this actually goes through and he ends up being convicted on these charges, that's a horrible thing for journalism on a whole. It means that if you link to something that's associated with a crime that happened,
yeah,
suddenly you're responsible for that crime. You can't do journalism, you especially cannot do journalism online if you can't link to things.
yeah, it sets a precedent, definitely.
Yeah, especially with the fact that Obama leaks things, or the Obama administration strategically leaks things to major newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post if it makes the administration look good, but they get mad at people for publishing leaks that make them look bad, and they go after them and go pretty much ruin their lives.
Right.
I had the saddest moment the other day. I was reading online that Change .gov, I guess, had removed their page where specifically Obama had said, he's going to end the war on whistleblowers and, make it easier.
Oh, no way.
Well, the reason it was so sad was part of the article was linking to the page on archive.org that, it's the web archive that saves pages from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a project that was set up by Aaron Swartz, who was a local activist.
The late Aaron Swartz.
Who was also involved in a lot of these same ideas that, people like Barrett Brown, even like Edward Snowden are, this freedom of information, making sure that people have access to what they need to be able to make informed decisions.
Yeah, net neutrality. I mean,
absolutely.
That's what he started Reddit.com. I mean, he was brilliant, and the world and our government got to him, or whatever actually happened. But
it's this over prosecution in cases where they don't like the person. They didn't like Aaron Swartz's politics, so they were throwing the book at him for something that was in no way illegal.
Yeah.
They didn't like Barrett Brown's politics, so they're throwing the book at him for linking to something and making an angry YouTube video. I mean, I defy anyone listening to tell me they've never said something online that they later regret.
Yeah. If you want to tune in, you can listen on OBR.FM. We are Occupy Boston Radio for the 99%, home of the horizontal democracy. You can check us out on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/The Real News Crew with a Z. Or you could give us a call. Please call us. I'm going to bring that number up for you in just a second.
So, I mean, basically what we're getting at here is that the prosecutors of this country, the prosecutorial overreach is like a major tool the administration's been using in order to silence activists and take, destroy movements that they fear are going to challenge the status quo or make a difference. And a lot of the people that I know as a activist that are in jail right now are people who, didn't even break a law. Most like if there's another person, Weave, who didn't actually hack. Like it was the thing that he broke into was already or didn't break into it. It was already open. It was a crime of curiosity, and he's in jail now for not nearly as much time as Barrett's facing, but it was people still can't. It was the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is a really broad law that they were charging Aaron Swartz under as well.
Well, like everything is now.
Yeah. They'll bend it to it's really it's almost like anarchy, because they'll bend it to their rule instead of, or their way, the benefit to benefit them, instead of actually like making the law apply to everyone equally.
Justice,
which is what the rule of law is supposed to be.
What America is supposed to be about. Exactly. It's just something we reference here on the Real News often is HR 1955, the Homegrown Terrorism Act. And in that it says that, anyone could be a terrorist, and all you have to do really is use force. But if you look up the definition of force, there's so many definitions, it's so broad. It could be to force a smile, influencing somebody. All those things could be considered force, and it's scary. It pretty much just says that they could do whatever they want.
Well, I mean, if you listen to the justifications for PRISM and whatnot, they're using these anti-terror laws to say it's okay to spy on everybody all the time. It's one of my favorite quotes about it is, they want to collect the entire haystack so they can find the needles, but the Fourth Amendment specifically exists to say that you cannot collect the haystack. It's not allowed.
Right.
And it's really insane how much privacy we've lost and how early we lost it. Like the fact that we're just finding out now that they've been storing all this data for so long. It's disturbing.
It is. It's because the Fourth Amendment. I mean, when they search, that means they're supposed to search. I mean, what happened to innocent until proven guilty?
No, now it's the other one now.
It's the other way around. It's guilty until proven innocent. And the fact is, if you scrutinize anybody, inevitably there's going to be something you did, whether you littered or something.
There's actually a great blog post on this website. It's the number 0 and then the letter v.org. And it's I don't remember the exact title, but it's "You're Now a Felon," basically. And what they did was they changed the terms of service on the website to say you're not allowed to read this article, you're not allowed to link to this article. So as soon as you read it under the CFAA, you are a felon.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Like, obviously an unconvicted felon, but everything, the way that all the computer laws are written right now are so completely blind to the realities of technology that almost anything you do online at any moment is probably illegal.
If you sign up,
if you are looking at a website when you're under 18, most websites actually say you can't look at it if you're under 18. So you're already committing a felony right there. It's already a felony.
Wow.
And your parents are committing one by letting you go on the website, even though there's no adult content. Like, there's probably not even any cuss words on it. They just put that in the terms of service. You don't read it. Nobody reads it.
Wow.
And just the computer laws are so insanely out of whack. And part of that is what Barrett is facing, some of these really crazy, like, accessing systems thing. And really, most of it comes down to this idea that because there was some credit card information in the data that was dumped, and he linked to the entire dump of the data, they're trying to build this case that it was spreading this information for the intent of identity theft.
Which, didn't happen.
Which is just not the case at all.
And there's no precedence of him ever participating in anything
in fact,
that would be...
No.
He discouraged it.
He's one of the people when he was, working more closely with Anonymous, they would make fun of him for being too much of a nice guy.
Yeah.
It was a cover.
Clearly. He was just planning on waiting until somebody else posted a link 800 times so he could then post it, somebody else could use it illegally.
And the thing is, since this was an entrapment operation, all the, Stratfor knew this was going to happen. Or at least they actually, in fact, that video where the president of Stratfor is talking about how they knew about it in early December. This happened at the end of December, this hack. So, like, they had the people whose credit card information were leaked. No one's, like, come forward and said, oh, yes, my identity was stolen because of Stratfor.
Protected. Okay.
Everyone there. And locked down because they knew this was about to happen. This was, like, they were cooperative with this. Yeah. So,
and honestly, anytime somebody's trying to do credit card fraud, the last thing they want to do is dump it publicly so the news is going to publish it, because those people immediately shut their cards down.
Stratfor shouldn't be storing their customers' credit card information in plain text anyway. God, they ever heard of salting their hashes?
Oh, we're going to start talking about Sony if we get into that.
There's a Supreme Court case coming up for net neutrality. I believe it's Verizon versus the FCC.
I don't know. They've been kind of 50-50 on decisions lately, so I'm not holding my breath they're going to get it right.
Oh, I'm scared.
Wait, is this about is this about like traffic precedents? Like, okay, yeah. Net neutrality. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason we're still functioning. I feel like as soon as
well, I mean, the
laws like this are passed, we're like shows like this are the first things that are gonna go. We already have problems with the computer.
Yeah, well, they're even once they've charged somebody and they're awaiting trial, they don't get a fair trial either. Like Barrett's now, actually recently, they've imposed a gag order on Barrett and his defense team, so they can't talk to the press anymore. It makes it a lot harder to raise funds, and it makes it so the message can't be spread. People don't get to know what's going on because he can't talk about it because it will, screw up his right to a fair trial. Meanwhile,
if he doesn't raise the funds, he can't possibly have a fair trial.
Right, exactly.
Especially because a lot of the forensics places that work with the government, they only get paid if they return a guilty, finding.
If they have a conviction.
So they have really a high rates of confirming what the prosecution thought. It's ridiculous. The entire system is built to extract money. And it extracts it out of some of the most vulnerable populations, too. It's coming out of activists. It's coming out of people who are already, horribly, poverty-stricken. It's just another one of those ways where money is getting pulled out from the bottom and thrown into the pockets of the people at the top.
Right, and the thing that happens, like how we're talking about the for-profit prison system, is when people are, the more poor they are, the more desperate they become, and the more apt they are to commit crimes. Probably of a more violent nature to survive, because that will survive could take over. I mean, it's not for everybody, but in that strategically works to these people's advantage.
Absolutely.
With the for-profit prison system, and it costs around $30,000 to keep one prisoner in jail for a year. That's more than poverty than most salaries right now.
And it's the sort of thing where it also works to keep the population from speaking out about things they have problems about. If you're, paycheck to paycheck and, you're renting and you're not really sure where you're going to be even 2 months from now, you can't afford to go out to the streets unless you're an incredibly brave person, like, some activists are. But, we were talking earlier before the show, we learned about how, being an activist is really a privilege. We're both very lucky to be in positions where we can do this and we're not risking our incomes or our housing. And there are other people who don't have that privilege.
Yeah, and luckily, I mean, at least if you're an activist and you get, arrested and charged, if you're an activist of the right type, you'll have lawyers like people at the ACLU and the National Lawyers Guild, or people like Barrett's lawyers, Ahmed, who, out of the caring about the greater good, will donate their time and to help give you a strong defense. But, if you're just the average guy in the street who has a little bit of weed in his pocket and gets stop and frisked and, gets charged with, like, possession, and it's, oh, no, it happened a couple times, now you're in jail for, like, that takes a huge chunk of your life. Mm-hmm. And it makes it a lot harder to find a job afterwards. Like, basically, you have to return to a life of crime because there's no other options. I mean, there are other options, but it just makes, it's like putting up blockades and every chance that people have of moving forward.
And I feel like a gag order is a violation of our First Amendment rights.
Oh, absolutely.
And same thing with activists. Like, if you're an activist, as long as you don't, bring your politics into the workplace, it really shouldn't affect your employment. It shouldn't affect your employment, and that's why the Constitution is there. It really shouldn't be considered a privilege. It should be a right.
Yeah, and with the gag order, what they were accusing us of doing was, or what they were accusing the defense team of doing was, coordinating with the media and, working to sway public opinion into our favor, which is like, that's what PR is. But it wasn't actually the defense team. It was, the organization, freebarrettbrown.org. I mean, we may be in contact with the lawyers. But
one of the things that we were trying to do early on was to make sure that we were in contact with the lawyers so we could say, we want to say this thing. Is this going to damage his case?
Right.
And now we can't have those conversations anymore, which is really...
It's ludicrous.
It's awful for his case. It's awful for us, because we want to make sure that he has the money to get a fair trial, because it's important not just to him, but to everybody because of the precedents that will be set.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's unfair to him because he's a writer for a living, and they haven't even let him, post bail. He's been in jail for over a year now, just sitting there waiting for trial.
Yeah, I run into that whole mentality a lot. We're talking about Syria. I don't want to quite get into Syria yet, but... with all the propaganda out there, people ask me, because I'll say, oh, well, I don't think it was the president. I think that it was the rebel forces, just based on, all this stuff. Because one of the things that's missing is the motive.
What? The motive?
The motive.
For the president to gas people?
To gas? And
they're trying to overthrow him. I mean, isn't that the motive? There's a pretty big motive to, like Saddam Hussein did it too. Like this, this happens.
Yeah, I don't have enough information to make a decision one way or the other. Mm-hmm. All I know is that if we tried to help 2 years ago, there were a lot of really good people on the ground. We've lost just so many good people in Syria already. At this point, it like,
sucks. There's no movement.
I don't have any nice ways to put what it is. It is a mess and a half, and nothing we do right now is probably going to make it any better because we waited so long, and they've already lost so many of the good people, and so many rotten people have come in.
Yeah, a lot of mercenaries from Libya.
You have mercenaries coming from all over the world just going there for war tourism at this point. It's disgusting. It's an awful place.
Well, the reason I say that about the motive is because from what I'm hearing, I mean, what do we have when we look at a case, objectively? You have witnesses. You have testimony, you have physical evidence, you have motive. Those are the kind of the determining factors that whether or not they can convict you. And so when you look at the case with Syria, you have witnesses, and the people that I've talked to that actually live in Syria or have family that live in Syria, they tell me that Assad, and it's been reported by The Guardian as well, has the support of most of his people, and that these terrorist groups only started a couple years ago when the CIA and our government started funding the insurgency.
We did do that.
And militarily, from any standpoint, for Assad, it would be political suicide to bomb your own people, especially as ineffectual as it was. It just doesn't make sense.
He's been bombing his own people for the past 2 years. What happened in Homs?
Yeah, nobody actually cares too much about him bombing his own people.
Yeah,
people are only
it's
whining
chemical
now
weapons.
because it's chemical weapons.
Yeah, which is weird because bombs kill people too. That's like a
right. I know. Why is one crime more cruel than the other?
No, I do think that getting the chemical weapons out is a good step.
Yeah,
and it's weird that Russia is the sane actor in the international community right now because like they took in Snowden and now they're taking the chemical weapons out of Syria.
Right.
And,
is Russia the new America? Should we all jump on some
No,
pilgrim ships?
I mean,
I'm not getting on a boat with
Russian,
Putin.
but I don't think it's enough.
I'm not getting on a boat with Putin. That guy's terrifying. Oh, I probably shouldn't talk about him. He'll show up.
Putin's a new
look
boogeyman.
look in the mirror and say Putin 3 times.
He shows up shirtless, riding on a bear.
Windsurfing?
Yeah, creepy look in his eye.
Windsurfing with a bear.
Yep.
Tiger over his shoulder.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. The thing is, nobody in this country really wants to go to another war.
Right.
Especially given that the story that they're telling us now is the same story that was false that got us into Iraq, right? They have weapons of mass destruction. Oh, wait, where are they? Oh, oops, it's a war.
Well, they do have weapons, but I mean, the thing is, when these attacks started, that's basically when we started funding them. So,
yeah, that's what we do.
It's there's no physical evidence in either way. I mean, we say that there's evidence.
Well, there's chemical weapons have been. It's been identified what they used to launch them with at this point, according to my sources, and that it was actually highly effective because of the particular weather conditions of the day. It was more easily spread, which was actually possibly an accident on whoever was firing them's part. But it looks like the technical details of what were used to fire these chemical weapons indicate that it was probably the regime in power, not like a bunch of rebels in the basement. But this is what the UN
right. I mean, that's
says,
what the sources of our allies say.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like the Western media.
Yeah.
And so, and what I was telling these people is that the people of Syria are coming here. They're calling their family here. They're like, that's not what's happening. It's our president is a good president. We love our president.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. It's not what I've heard.
Well, it's a torn country. It's in the middle of a civil war. There are going to be people who
and
support
I was
the
talking to
president.
people that were in Homs. So
yeah, they're going to be people on both sides. Honestly, imagine if somebody was talking to somebody in the U.S. during our civil war.
Even during the Bush administration.
Or
even now.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, some people think
two
Obama's the Antichrist.
Opposite sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's a really good liar.
Yeah, well, they have to be.
Well, we're catching on now, though. We're catching on.
I want to believe that he was the idealist he said he was, and he just got crushed by the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have that kind of faith, I think.
Yeah, some people need their security blanket or their nightlight. I just need to believe that he wasn't evil when I voted for him.
No, I did. I voted for him in 2008, and regardless of what he did or what he has done or hasn't done, I voted for the principle that he was against the war, then he was going to shut down Guantanamo, and he didn't. But
I know
I'm not going to vote for a guy that says bomb Iran.
I won't vote for one of the major two parties again.
Yeah,
I'll vote Green. I'll vote Pirate. I'll vote Libertarian, maybe, but
right?
Not economic libertarian.
I feel like a lot of people are kind of fed up with the two-party system.
Well, yeah, especially if you look at the issues that are most important to, I guess, activists like me, internet issues and freedom of information issues. The vote on whether to amend the Patriot Act so that they couldn't have mass data collection of our phone calls and internet traffic. That vote did not go. It was like almost an even split, and it did not go along party lines. It wasn't Democrat Republican like it usually is. It was a mix of far left Democrats and libertarians allied against like basically the talking heads and the administration and the people that are always on like MSNBC and Fox News.
Yeah.
And it was really weird to see the breakdown of the two-party
Is that the
system.
Amash?
Yeah. The Amash Amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it was really interesting because I feel like we've been yelling like, "Hey guys, look! Look! The system is not. The two parties are not any different from each other. Really, there's only a few small differences, but it's like two puppets with the same person controlling each side."
And the problem is that they manipulate the social issues to make you ignore the more important issues. Like, I am 100% for women's rights and for gay marriage and all the good stuff, but to me, like, most of those things are in victory lap and make sure we don't fall backwards mode. And the stuff that's really important that we need to start focusing on now because it's the coming fights, people are not paying any attention to because they're still stuck in this, culture warfare that's so last century. I can't even wrap my head around why
They
we're
call
still
them
fighting.
wedge issues, and they're made prevalent by the media.
Right.
Exactly. And
That's the point.
I mean, even an issue that, the media loves to yell and scream about, like abortion. Like, I swear to you, I have a friend that is pro-life, and she is the sweetest person, and we've had civil discussions about it, like normal goddamn human beings. And just the entire government cannot behave like rational people about that stuff because they're creating this theater to distract you from, we're spying on you, we are taking away your rights to all of these things, we are making sure that you don't have access to the things that you need to succeed in life, because if you have access to that, you're going to threaten our moneyed friends who keep us in office.
We're building huge empty prisons that are laying vacant, waiting for new immigration policies, quote, or
they're not empty in
martial law.
California.
Right.
It's just the whole thing is insane, to me as a younger voter, because the things that I hear the most from people is, we want our government to stop spying on us, to make sure that the infrastructure works. We want our roads and bridges and schools. Thank you very much. We like police. We like fire departments, as long as the police are behaving themselves, which they are not lately. And we want to get rid of all these laws that are counterproductive. We want to get rid of, the draconian drug laws. We want to get rid of these computer laws that were written before the internet was even a thing, which don't make any sense. We need new laws that actually make sense and keep it a free place to exchange information. We need to overhaul these copyright laws that are just hamstringing people. Like, it is crazy if you're trying to make new things in this world. I mean, the Disney extensions on copyrights are just crazy at this point.
Right. Remember when Paris Hilton tried to copyright or patent That's Hot?
Oh,
It's like, you can't copyright that.
Who was the guy who was the YOLO thing? Who was complaining that it was on T-shirts and people were making money off of it?
Is that Drake?
I think so. It sounds right.
Well, I mean, didn't Jay-Z have like an Occupy Wall Street shirt he tried to sell back when Occupy happened? That was
He didn't
They were
try
all-
to copyright it.
right. That's true.
That would be a good. I would be happy with.
Actually, there were people who did, though, right? There was a couple who did in New York that tried to copyright it.
Yeah, I mean, somebody actually tried to copyright the Anonymous logo in Germany, and they just got screamed at.
I mean, Alan Moore didn't even copyright it.
No.
Or no, does he have?
It's a Guy Fawkes mask.
Yeah, no, but I think it
Actually,
is copyrighted.
There's
by
a funny
some-
thing about the Guy Fawkes mask. There was an article that was released a couple years ago about how much extra money Time Warner is making off of the Guy
Right.
Fawkes mask because of
They
Anonymous.
license
And there were these Anons who would start yelling about it, like, oh, we should stop giving them money. And every time I ran into one of those conversations online, I would just yell at everybody to shut up, because what is happening here is we're giving them money for a product, and then we are using their product and their intellectual property all over our propaganda everywhere. We were putting this on T-shirts that we were selling for profit, and they're not touching us. And it's
Right.
it's the way that it should be.
Right.
And I love that there is an example of how intellectual property should work, where they put this thing out into the world and we are using it and everybody's fine because everybody is making a little bit of money off of the thing, and everyone's not suing each other and being jerks.
Socialism.
I know.
Actually, I think that's the free market.
Oh, is that? I don't know. I think
Oh no, I'm not saying. I'm not. That's just a joke. That's something. Somebody would say that. You know. And
Yeah.
today is just like sounds like socialism.
Yeah. I guess when the free market sounds like socialism, this is when you're in America.
Right. I mean, think about the artists that get started when, as musicians, they start. And it's just about sharing and playing for your friends and just putting a smile on people's faces at venues and maybe making enough money just so you can continue writing songs. But then it's just like, it's like the money goes to their heads if that's what happens,
Well, there's this expectation that if you make it in America, you have to make it disgustingly well as part of this, poisoned expectation we have for success in this country, where if you're not, a national name with like millions of dollars, then you still have to work harder. And there's no idea that maybe we could just have everybody be able to be pretty successful, to be able to have a nice house that they can live in and support their families. Like there's so much.
To have a living wage.
There's so much. The people at the top need to get richer because they need to be up at that, tiny little, 1% of the 1%. And so they just siphon money from every single level below them as hard as they can. And the laws are written to make sure that that money keeps going to them. The laws do not benefit the people who are, in the lower classes. They're not written to benefit young people. And you actually end up with all these people who, can't even vote, some of them, once you have a felony. So they can't vote out the people who are creating these laws that are poisoning their community.
Right.
Wow, you can't vote?
No. Or it's a state-by-state thing, right?
No, you can vote for some things, but you can't vote for president with a felony.
Right.
And I think it might be the other national officers, too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that the president, is national, and the other what you can vote for and what you can't is state based on state. They have different laws per state, I think. I think that's what I've heard.
But, I mean, that's part of why Aaron Schwartz was so opposed to the plea bargain that he was given, because it would give him a felony, and he wanted to be a political activist. And it's really hard to be a political activist when you've got a felony record.
Right. I mean, I can totally see, like, if you're a serial killer or something like that, not being able to vote. But
If you're still in prison
for a nonviolent crime?
like,
If you're
maybe, but once
know.
you're out of prison, it's for years afterwards.
I think that
Yeah.
one person, one vote doesn't matter. Like, just, I just don't think that there should be any lines drawn on disenfranchisement of anyone, especially based on, because a lot of criminality is based on class, and the system is so broken that we can't even use something like, they broke a law to define whether somebody is able to make a decision on the president or not. Like, I don't know. There's already enough disenfranchisement in this country.
That's true.
I don't know about serial killers. I know, like, it's weird.
The thing is, there are very few serial killers.
Right.
So they
There's,
won't
like-
throw the vote.
Right, exactly. But there's a lot of people who have nonviolent crime arrests, and a lot of people with nonviolent crime convictions. And
Now,
I
Lauren,
agree with
pot
that.
might become legal if you keep talking like that. You can't do that.
wait, I think it is.
Is it?
I mean, it's legal for me.
It's legal.
Not all of us have the card.
It's still illegal federally, though. It's
Right.
like-
Well, look, a drone.
isn't that what Obama started cracking down on in California? Is that
Actually, what's really
He stopped.
interesting is, the Snowden thing happened, and so the NSA is in the news all the time, and all of a sudden Obama thinks that the DOJ needs to start talking about how they're not going to be, doing the mandatory minimum sentencing on drug crimes, and like all these other bones he's handing us to try to get the media to shut up. Area 51.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, declassified.
The declassified Area I swear it was just so they could get the conspiracy theorists to shut up about the NSA because they thought that would be enough.
Just to
and
distract it, yeah.
It was a distraction. It didn't work. And, sometimes I really do think that, some of the talk about Syria is an attempt at distracting people from that.
Well, it's just we're doing, and from my perspective, it just seems like we're doing what we always do, which is like we're friends or just neutral, and then we send them the chemicals to make the weapons. I don't know if you read about that in the Telegraph last week. We talked about this story. The UK shipped Syria the chemicals to make the sarin gas.
We sell them intelligence programs and software to spy on their own citizens as well. We do that for a lot of oppressive regimes, not just us, but European countries. It's
Actually, that was one of the things that Project PM was working on when. Did you ever hear about the HB Gary hack?
No.
This was a couple years ago. This was actually when Project PM sort of took off. With this, Project PM was Barrett Brown's baby. He was the first one. He brought in more people. But basically, HB Gary said they had the leaders of Anonymous. They knew who they were, and they were going to send the list to the FBI. So
Oh,
a bunch of
gosh.
Anons went, no, we need to see this list. We have to see this. And they broke into this security firm, this online security firm that's contracting with the government, and they broke in like ridiculously easy. Like it wasn't even, not even breaking a sweat. And so they got all these emails out of that. And, they made fun of Aaron Barr, who was the guy. They wiped his iPad. It was really hilarious. But Barrett took this data that, the hackers dumped, and he was digging through it, and he found out that there was a defense contract that H.B. Gary was bidding for, and Booz Allen Hamilton was bidding for. That was so that you could have one person sitting at a desk controlling 500 social media profiles, and really solid profiles. Like,
Wow.
they'd be, from a region, and they would use the right, types of slang and everything else. And they were going to use that to push public opinion different ways. And
Like trolling.
no, not trolling. Like creating false consensus.
Right.
Make-
Or
Making
just posting links.
Making
and-
people think that everybody thinks this, so I should get on this bandwagon.
Right.
And they also were talking about using it to identify people who were, kind of, fringe elements that need to be dealt with. And that got used against people in other countries. During the Arab Spring, there were some of the countries that tried to get things going, and the people all got arrested right away because,
Bahrain.
what's Bahrain?
Bahrain.
No, Bahrain, everybody was getting shot. There was another one where they tried and it didn't even get off the ground because it was where Booz Allen Hamilton has their headquarters. It was like Azerbaijan. or
Oh, it's probably United Arab Emirates, maybe? Dubai?
Could be. I don't know.
I'm
I don't know
not
that particular
remembering.
one.
I should have looked this up
They
before I
have
came
really
in.
lax regulation in United Arab Emirates.
Well,
There's
yeah,
a lot
it's
of
the business capital over there, right?
But the thing was that they used this to identify dissidents and round them up before they could get things started. And this is something, there was a contract that, independent contractors were bidding for. It was a contract with the government, and all the proofs already been dumped. And PRISM is directly related to that. I mean, Booz Allen Hamilton is the company that Snowden was working for when he got all this information out.
Wow.
So all of this stuff that's finally becoming really public is stuff that, a lot of Anons and a lot of people who were associated with Project PM, we knew sort of the outlines of this big bad problem, but we didn't know all the detail that we finally have. And, there are still people going through the information from the Stratfor hack to try to figure out exactly where all this stuff is happening. And you see so much unethical behavior and so much just outright illegal, unconstitutional, disgusting behavior. And the people who are, finding this out, the people who are saying things about it, you've got Snowden in exile. Like, literally, he is in exile. He's been exiled to Russia. This has happened somehow. We've got Barrett facing 105 years. We've got the people who did the hack.
Wow,
already
I
in
was,
jail.
I was going to ask what his sentence could be, and I didn't.
105 years.
Yeah. It's actually, since the Snowden leaks came out, it's been sort of a vindication for Barrett and Project PM, because it's like, we sort of sounded the alarm first, I guess, or when it was some of the first people to be like, except in this case, it was contractors, but in Snowden's case, it was the NSA. But, I mean, ultimately, it's part of the same military-industrial complex and part of the same intelligence surveillance complex that's spying on American citizens and breaking all our constitutional protections. And
I really love every time they try to defend themselves, going,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
we weren't going to use that against American citizens. Like, you just
And
told
then a
us you're
story-
going to use it on everybody else in the world. We're not happy with you.
Right, and then a story comes out the next week that shows that they did use it on American citizens. One of the things about the contractors is that they have even less oversight than the NSA. Like, NSA has like FISA courts and stuff, and it's not real oversight, but it's like fake oversight. Like the surveillance contractors, really, I mean, this guy Aaron Barr, like he was a total flake. He was, I wouldn't have trusted him to like walk my dog.
Yeah,
But,
they regulate themselves.
The government gave him a ton of money to, run this surveillance company or this intelligence or contracting company, HB Gary, and find all the Anons, all the leaders of Anonymous, and they were innocent people. That the methods he was using to pinpoint who was what, who used what name, were were ridiculous, and
They were-
that means innocent people were targeted just because they logged on and off a Facebook account at a certain time.
I mean, the actual document that the Anons, initially were looking for just proved very quickly how much of an incompetent moron Aaron Barr really is.
Yeah.
Like, he had people's cities wrong. He had, things associated with the wrong people. He put down names like Guido Fox like it was somebody's real name, because that's what they had as their Facebook name. And he's like, oh, well, you can't lie on Facebook, right? Even though he was lying on Facebook about his name right then.
Right.
He was just incredibly bad at his job.
I feel like a lot of the people who are really, uber successful nowadays have sold their souls. And I feel like a lot of the people with integrity and passion for their work and who are, champions of the truth are the ones who are being prosecuted because, that's what...
That's what happens over and over again. Private Manning is in prison. The people who shot those kids
Yeah.
are fine.
Yeah.
The guy who went and rescued the children got reprimanded for it.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
Like,
I don't
I
know.
mean,
What's
well,
going-
if you
it's
look
very
at other-
counterintuitive.
Other whistleblowers from the NSA and the administration, it was Thomas Drake and William Binney. They both got targeted and harassed. They didn't go to jail because I guess they didn't have anything on them. But they were whistleblowers. They were saying, "Hey, the NSA is going to spy on American citizens. They have plans to spy on American citizens," and no one listened until a couple years ago.
They didn't dump data. That's the problem.
Right, they didn't dump data, so the people just tried to write them off as crazy, or the government figured people would, which maybe they did for a while. But they seem like pretty sane people to me, and they've been proven right through all this.
And they are spying. I'm making weird connections in my head with all these stories.
Don't worry, it's late.
All these stories that we cover here on the Real News. I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, Walmart came out with those RFID tags on your clothes, and they're talking about putting RFID in fiber, and then you hear about Naked Juice being or PepsiCo being sued or settling out of court for $9 million because they have some sort of patented fiber from Japan. All this weird stuff.
There's weird stuff.
There's always a conspiracy bigger than the conspiracy.
I don't
There's
know.
bigger and bigger ones, but I mean, I don't know what's going on with fiber and RFID tags. I guess it is. I don't think they need that. They have face recognition software and all kinds of close-circuit cameras.
Biometrics. And...
Yeah, they don't need to tag everybody. I guess they could, but
I don't know. I think that ultimately the change needs to be cultural, because right now people aren't as concerned about, their biometric data or, their telephone metadata or any of that stuff being out there. Mm-hmm. And so you don't see as much public outcry as there really should be. And you need to get to the point where you're explaining to people, no, they're actually listening to your phone calls, they're recording your phone calls before they'll even pay attention. And even then, there's too much of this, nothing to hide, nothing to fear, which is not true.
right.
But until you get people at a cultural level to start demanding that they have some level of privacy, no amount of technical workarounds are going to keep you safe. They'll work for a little while. I mean, we've only just recently found out that a whole bunch of security measures people were using online were either backdoored or things have been cracked that people thought were not crackable, ways for encrypting your data. And it's really scary because people who thought that they were fairly secure are now finding out that even though, they tried to keep themselves, to keep their privacy, they went out of their way, even, in some cases at a lot of personal expense, and the government still just did not respect that in any way. And these aren't people who were doing anything illegal. They just wanted their privacy. It could be, because they want to bank more securely because they don't want people busting into their stuff. It might be because they're, in a business and they need to protect their trade secrets. And just everything is getting, there's physical backdoors and some.
I've been noticing weird links on my computer, and the history would be, it's almost as if it sends you to one page and then it sends you to another page, and it's just weird.
Sometimes
cookies
redirects are pretty normal. You might have a lot of cookies on there. There may be a virus. I mean, the odds that you can see directly something that the government is doing is pretty low. Usually what they're doing is they're taking the data from the ISP. They're not even touching your computer.
Well, no, usually it would be something, but this time I noticed something was a little strange. But and also, if you have a Mac, it automatically, if you upload pictures onto your Mac, it automatically finds the face and it'll save it as a face file on your computer. so it's to be easily searchable, maybe by remotely.
Yeah, it's convenient for the people who are, whose pictures it is, but, it also is a thing where you might not want that because you might not want people going through your stuff and seeing, the people that you're hanging out with.
It's also terribly ineffective because it gives a lot of noise to the analysts who are trying to analyze all this data that's coming in, trying to find terrorism and, evidence that there's an actual crime being committed. Meanwhile, they're sorting through everyone's face on Facebook and everyone's posts on Twitter. Like, it doesn't really add up to any more security. We're just trading privacy for nothing, for the feeling of security, I guess, which is even more appalling. And
I mean, if you look at what we've done in the last, let's say, 12 years, because September 2001 is as good a date as any to start talking about it.
Right.
We're just over and over again getting freaked out about something that's not terribly likely to happen. Like the odds that somebody is going to actually attempt to hack into, like, I don't know, the waste treatment plant and screw something
it's
up.
going to happen tomorrow now.
You're more likely to be struck by lightning than killed in a terrorist attack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The actual physical terrorist attacks that we're giving up all kinds of privacy for, the cyber attacks that they're arguing we should give up all of our online privacy for. These are so incredibly rare, and even when they happen, they're not as awful as we've been sold. Like even the worst terror attack that happened in the United States, that's not the worst thing that's happened in the United States.
Right.
More people die of...
We get hit
lot
by
of things,
cars
yeah.
more often than that.
Or in our war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Exactly. I mean, the worst stuff that happens online is your credit card might get, taken out from someplace, or your password gets dumped because you use the same password on too many sites. And it's easy to deal with. You go and you deal with your credit card. You go and you change your passwords. You don't need to give up all of this online privacy. There are people who are trying to argue for everybody should use their real name on everything on the internet. Everything should be connected with this one persistent identity to get rid of trolls. And no, they're trolls. Learn how to deal with them.
Right.
Like, the benefit is in no way worth the cost over and over again. And I'm sorry, there's no benefit for putting people like Barrett, like Glenn Greenwald, like Snowden. Like, there's no benefit to putting these people in jail or to make their lives more difficult, because all they're trying to do is make this country a better place. All they're trying to do is make sure that you and me have the ability to make informed decisions about our elected representatives.
There is a benefit for our leaders who are committing war crimes. They want to continue to get away with that without being exposed and having any hard evidence, which I feel a lot of these journalists have clearly presented. We have no right being in all sorts of sovereign nations and using, drones, and whether they're armed or unarmed, vessels. It doesn't matter. They're committing crimes of war.
One thing that I actually liked was an op-ed. I think that somebody, the guy from Cloudflare, the CEO of Cloudflare, wrote, a website is not a bomb. The stuff that's happening on the internet and the leaking of information and stuff, no one's died from that.
Right.
This isn't like the same as a drone flying over your house and shooting your whole family. This is words on the internet ultimately, and it is very important, and it's very important to our society and all that. But somebody's life should not be destroyed because they shared some information that another piece of paper said shouldn't. You'll go to jail if you share, even though there wasn't even a piece of paper that said that. But it's all very arbitrary, and it's very sickening. Because Barrett was actually he was a strong patriot. He believed in America, and he wanted America to do better, and he wanted us to turn around and make a choice. We have a choice to make. Like, in this generation, are we going to become this awful sort of Orwellian regime, or are we going to become like our free country, like our founding fathers intended? And part of that is a free press, an educated populace, freedom of speech, right to privacy. All of these things are necessary and important, and the current administration and the current two parties in power are not giving us that, and they don't seem to be going in that direction. And I know that the electoral system is very messed up, so it's very hard to get somebody from another party elected. But if everyone, I don't believe that it's impossible. And I think that we can
Right.
do
It's
better.
like it's not too late. The system is still intact, and it's still and that's why propaganda is so heavy with all this misinformation, is because they know that we still have a choice, but people time and time again are going to choose what the media tells them to choose, and that's what's really, we were talking about how the roles change, like the U.S. and Russia, with the Syria debate, and I keep going back to Syria because I think it's so important. Before, liberals, and I don't like to use labels, but like the left, Democrats were anti-war. Now all of a sudden they're pro-war. And conservatives are anti-war. Like, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. What's going on?
Well, they were anti-surveillance too, and Bush was doing it. They were upset because, your library records were going to go to the government. Now it's all your phone calls and all your metadata and everything you do on the internet. And they're like,
it's
"Oh,
okay."
Yeah, exactly." I mean, people like Glenn Greenwald have been pointing this out for years, and I mean, it's only now that people who haven't been caring about this stuff for that long are starting to realize that we were right. Both the parties are a bunch of liars. They're just a bunch of liars. So, they're just all hypocrites. And vote them all out.
I mean,
Vote pirate.
And so back to Syria again. We talk about motive, like the things you need to prosecute someone. Motive, physical evidence, witnesses, testimony. You have testimony from the people of Syria saying that it wasn't the president, that it was the rebels that have been committing these crimes against the Syrian people. That they're in support of their president. And then you have the motive for the U.S. to be in Syria, which is like the TAPI pipeline. They want to prevent these countries from using the gold dinar. They don't want people. It used to be, before you exchange the oil, you'd have to exchange it into the U.S. dollar, and then you could trade it. Like the U.S. dollar was the standard, but that's changing. It changed. What was it, last year or 2011, when China and Russia stopped using the U.S. dollar?
I think that might have been 2011. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and so that is happening more and more across the world as we lose our credibility as a free nation, because people around the world are seeing that we're not free, and that we are also falling under this military industrial complex that's sweeping the world. We talked about, I guess we're into world news now. But we talked about, or we've been talking about for the last few weeks, about a conflict in Indonesia, where they grow a lot of our rice, the rice that we use here in America, the rice that's used around the world. And Syngenta has been genetically engineering golden rice. It's kind of a crossbreed with corn. It's supposed to help the children with... It has more, with vitamin deficiencies, it has more beta carotene. And so they weren't supposed to plant these test crops. The people of Indonesia didn't want it. They had heard about GMOs. They heard how it can contaminate the DNA, and their rice is their life source. That's how they live. And they hear people stealing their farms. And so when they heard about these test crops, they joined up with a group in China where they tested this golden rice and fed it to children, supposedly. And so that group helped them in this protest and ripping up the fields. And Syngenta was, I guess, helpless against it because they were successful in ripping up the test fields, or the test crops. And in the same week, in the mainstream media, it was saying that there are, there's aggressors coming from the South China Sea, and we need to send U.S. troops over there, And it just sounds to me like, if you put you draw the lines together. I mean, I don't know. It's just we might be theorizing here.
Is there going to be a war over patents of the GMO crops?
Seed patents are disgusting. Like,
Yeah,
seriously, you plant the crop, you should have the seeds.
Right.
Well,
and I don't have a problem with GMO, to be honest. In theory, I don't have a problem with, I think we've been genetically modifying our crops for all of the time we've had agriculture. That's how natural selection we helped natural selection along.
That's a lot different. That's breeding, like crossbreeding, selective breeding. That's a lot different when you're talking about, we're very against GMOs here. on the
I'm against
the Real
against
News.
the systems in place that currently control the GMO system, like patents, for instance. The fact that farmers can be sued because their crops accidentally got pollinated. I mean, by Monsanto's GMO crops. I mean, that sucks. But I mean, if you make a plant that has more vitamins in it, like, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with selling and growing that plant.
Well, you're affecting it's an experiment, and you don't know how it's going to affect the biosphere. That's one thing. But somebody asked me, and they ask me all the time, why is it dangerous? And why are you against it? And there's lots of reasons. One reason is it's a virus. There are viruses. The way they create the GMOs is they take the trait, the DNA with the desired trait, and they need to insert it into the cell. And they do that you can do it manually. There's a way to do it
with plasmids, right?
Yeah, but what they'll do is they'll take a virus
Yeah.
and they'll stick the
My
DNA
brother
in there.
does
The
that.
virus will infect it.
But that's there's one way to do it without a virus, and there's a way
Right.
to do it with a virus, and the way to do it with the virus is more successful. And so for the first time, we've been seeing viruses across in our food supply. That really happened. It wasn't on the market until 1996. Another danger is monocropping. When you
Right.
have
no, monocropping is
That is a danger. So, yeah, plants that like alfalfa. There's no non-GMO alfalfa left in the country or something.
there's only
Or,
like 3 types of corn left in the world. or something.
Right,
And
right.
Oh no, it's like 4 types in Monsanto and it's 3 or something ridiculous like that. I mean, even
Yeah.
with bananas, how we got down to like the one kind that people actually eat.
But
And
was that from GMO or was that just from farming?
that was from farming, but
Right.
it's one of those things where because the farming
If
farming
we-
business has been protected by honestly military force for
Yeah.
so long.
That's
another extension of that.
It stifles natural selection because you have a plant that's dependent on pesticides, that's dependent
Right.
on chemical fertilizers. So it doesn't. And when you get rid of that biodiversity, then it prevents any beneficial mutations or anything.
Well, actually, like the real concern with that is, once you start dealing with the peak oil problem, most of those pesticides are based on having access to
Petroleum.
oil to make them. So once you lose that, then you can't keep these crops healthy because they needed the pesticides, and then they die out, and then we don't have any more corn
thought-
ever. So
They were more resistant to pesticides. That was what the
no, the point is they're resistant to pesticides, but they need the pesticides to kill the pests because
They
they
don't
don't
have
have the other defenses that, like corn, like normal corn, will actually like call parasitic wasps to come kill whatever
right,
eating.
right.
Which is
I
hilarious.
thought the bugs were getting more resistant to the pesticides.
The
So
bugs
we
are getting
need
more
more and stronger pesticides.
Yeah,
we need
right.
stronger and stronger plants to tolerate it.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
you end up the first couple years where you don't have enough pesticide to go around, where you lose the
Yeah.
entire crop,
Yeah.
and then corn is something that's in history books.
And corn, it's genetically engineered to produce a Bt toxin, so it produces its own pesticide. So I mean, and we don't know the implications of that, but we haven't really seen in humans significant effects. We're a lot bigger, but we have seen effects in lab rats and test animals where they develop tumors and all that stuff. But another thing I like to talk about when we're talking about GMOs, I'm sorry. I'm just food news.
It's your show.
is one of my main passions. But in 1986, Reagan wrote the framework for the introduction of GMO foods onto the market. And in 1988, if you think about it, so you have 1986, you have enough time for them to draw up their plans, for them to plant the test crops, and then 1988 is really when the crops would start coming up, and this started with canola, like soybeans, the first GMO crops. 1988, we had our first 4 fatalities from peanut anaphylaxis. Never before had anybody died from peanut allergy.
What? Really? No one had died before?
Yep. I mean, there might be some random and undocumented things from before that, but yeah. So there's that, and then if you look at what soy is, it's a legume like a peanut. So we don't know if that could affect it, but we did see also again in 1996 when GMOs were supposed to officially hit the market, the instances of peanut allergy doubled. or rose 50%. I mean, it was just a huge jump. I have to check back on whether it doubled or whether it was a 50% increase. But to me, that's a significant indicator. And the FDA would just say that that's not true, and that's
the number has
inconclusive.
Of children affected with peanut allergies has doubled between 1997 and 2002, though 20% of people outgrow it. But that is a huge amount, and it might be partially. Isn't allergies have something to do with exposure when you're young? If you're exposed to it too
There's
young,
a couple different theories on it.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting ones is because we don't have parasites running around our gut, we're more likely to
Beneficial bacteria.
We need more.
No, not beneficial.
Bifidus flora?
No, like hookworms, like
we need more
actual
hookworms.
Parasites.
Oh, like we need to develop some sort of like immunity or natural.
There was a study where they had people with severe allergies, like really bad hay fever, like allergies, and they decided that being infected with hookworms for this test was an acceptable risk to take. So I hats off to those people. I don't think I could do that, but our bodies are actually designed to deal with these kinds of awful things running around in our systems, and so the theory was your body will spend the energy fighting those things, and hookworms specifically release some chemicals that actually depress your immune system a little bit, so it's not doing such a good job of attacking them. And so people, while they were infected, actually saw a significant reduction in their allergy symptoms.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't like that as the solution. I hope they can make a pill out of it at some point. That's not like eat this for tapeworm, but something for actually fixing the problem without parasites.
One of my friend Roger, he used to work for Monsanto, and he said that he worked removing the beneficial gene from wheat. But now what we're seeing more and more is celiac disease. People with
what I understand
allergies.
is that the wheat that's out now has a much higher concentration of gluten in it, so people who had minor gluten intolerance are much more affected now because there's so much more gluten in the wheat that we're using, and we use wheat in almost everything.
Yeah, and I don't know if a while ago there's this Japan, they canceled orders from the U.S. for wheat because they found that there was a GMO strain in the wheat that they were receiving that was banned.
I think in some ways,
many years ago.
One of the biggest problems with
8 years
GMOs
ago.
does come back down to some of the other stuff we were talking about, which is people need to have the information to make informed decisions.
Right.
They don't label GMOs very much.
Why is that?
Everything's labeled no GMOs, but you don't really know. Everything's labeled no hormones, but again,
Like Naked Juice. That's one of the reasons they were sued.
There's almost every milk company will say no hormones at all. Sometimes you will find a farm that, their farmers pledged and there they are shooting the cows up. So, accurate labeling on our food and honest labeling would really, I think, help a lot because people, like you who care a lot about this stuff would make the decision to go out and buy the things that you feel comfortable buying. And they would have to make, the crops for people like you. And I think a lot of people, if given the choice between a GMO or a natural one, are going to choose the natural one just because they feel safer that way, whether or not the GMO is actually dangerous. And even if the GMOs are completely and 100% fine and in no way are damaging people, you should have the right to make that choice. You just have the right to make that choice, in an informed way. And the business practices around them are just completely wrong. You shouldn't be doing this monocropping where you're, creating a real danger that we will run out of this crop because we don't have enough diversity. Mm-hmm. You're driving, small farms out of business with this seed patenting nonsense. And you're enforcing, these specific types of pesticides being used, which is, just making it really difficult for people to get by. So regardless of whether or not they're healthy or safe or anything else, the business practices are wrong. And that the fact that people are, again, through the government, through businesses, hiding information from people, it makes it impossible for you to live a life where you're making choices for yourself.
Well, it's dependent on it being on such a large scale. I mean, that's the only reason it's effective. Yeah. But
and a lot of that food goes to waste anyway.
In the long run, they found I was reading that they found that a new study found that organic actually produces more yield than conventionally grown crops, which probably has to do with the soil and what happens to the soil after with all these chemical fertilizers and pesticides.
What I think most of it is that a lot of organic farmers are, they'll not have just a field of one crop. A lot of times they'll have multiple crops in the field, and that's much better for the soil.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I went to Washington, D.C. On the 9th, Monday the 9th, I kind of sidestepped a little bit, and I caught the vigil. It's the longest standing peace vigil in the U.S. This lady, Concepcion, ran it. I guess she started the Peace House with her husband. She's been there since 1981, but don't take my word for it. We actually got to talk to the people, there are activists that watch the encampment for her, for Concepcion, and so we got to talk to her, and so I just wanted to play that for you.
I don't see anybody setting up any barricades like what happened the other day.
You can hear that.
When we were out here against Hands Off Syria, they kettled us in that ride gear. There was no reason to kettle us just by ourselves with horses.
This vigil right here has been here since 1981.
Really?
Longest running in the United States, right? Yeah. I would say DC, but this is the United States.
Yeah,
actually.
United States.
Continuously. Right now, we have people who add on and volunteer and take shifts. But the original lady, Concepcion, I can give you a flyer. Tells a little bit of her
Her
background.
organization is Proposition 1. Prop 1, number 1.org for them. But we were in another organization called the Peace House, which is a nonprofit organization. We work in the community, do a lot. We have the DC Free School that's going on. We have Anti-Racist Action Network that we do a lot of meetings with. We have a lot of meetings there. And we have different debate nights open for discussions.
Yeah, so it was a short interview, and but the reason I even bring that up is because that was Monday, and then the Wednesday night after that, 3 days later or 2 days later, the activists that were supposed to be watching the encampment left, and police officers saw them leaving. And they were like, "Are you leaving?" And they said, "Yeah." So they came and they dismantled. Oh, I'm sorry. So they came and they dismantled the encampment. And if you go, you'll see it's basically these two yellow pillars surrounding a tent that's an umbrella with a tarp. And there's blankets and stuff in there, and you'll see a couple activists kind of just hanging out outside, and it's very anti-nuclear, and it shows the shadows from the Hiroshima bomb, and victims of war and napalm and all that stuff, and so when they had broken it down, Concepcion was pleading. She said, "No, someone has to stop them from destroying the world." The liaison for Congress and the people of Washington D.C. got involved. And luckily that night it was restored and they brought it back. And so the longest running peace vigil in the U.S. is back and up and running tonight. So 32 years strong.
We've had a lot of war in that time, too.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. There should be more of those.
They didn't put out
peace
More
vigils.
wars,
Peace
not the
vigils.
wars.
Yes. Peace vigils, not wars. Yes.
Oh, that was great. So, anyway, we only have 15 minutes left in the show. I wanted to thank you guys again for coming on. And I thought maybe you'd want to remind everyone how we can donate and get involved in your cause.
Yep. This is freebarrettbrown.org. You can go straight to freebarrettbrown.org/donate. We accept, PayPal, Bitcoin. You can mail in checks, whatever people feel comfortable with. The goal is $250,000, and we're still only at $35,000. We need that money to be able to mount a credible defense for him, or else he's going to have a very difficult time having a fair trial at all. For more information, you can just go to freebarrettbrown.org. You can also take a look at the Twitter account at freebarrett_. You can also, take a look for, the hashtag Barrett Brown or Free Barrett. Normally there's something like that going on Twitter at any given moment.
There's actually, if you live in Minneapolis and are listening to this, which is unlikely, but there's a benefit show for Barrett on this Friday night, and there's one upcoming in the future in LA that's being planned to try to raise money for him.
Awesome.
There are also donations. There's an online donation, which Blue mentioned earlier, and there's many petitions going around right now, some of them from groups like Fight for the Future and Demand Progress.
Oh,
which
Fight for the Future is a great group.
And they're linked to on the freebarrettbrown.org website. He's actually gotten a lot of support in the past few months from like EFF, Reporters Without Borders, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and the Free Press, and WikiLeaks. And it's also due to a lot of the work of the director of Free Barrett Brown, Kevin Gallagher, who I want to thank tremendously for being so competent, because we're, all things considered, we have an awesome legal team and are working really hard to raise money, and people are starting to really remember Barrett's name. He's been in a lot more articles recently. Journalists are rushing to his defense, as they should be, because he would be rushing to their defense if anything was happening to them.
Yeah, we covered that story here in the Real News when it came out.
Right, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he's been in prison for over a year now. Just one other thing, we have had a lot of artists donate pieces of artwork. We actually had Shepard Fairey donate a couple articles for auction when we had our New York fundraiser. Oh. We have prints from another artist that are available for donation on the website. And as time goes on, we will have more people donating various art stuff like that.
Two more things, actually. I wanted to say that his mother actually has a sentencing next month on October 10, and anyone in Texas that wants to go support that.
His mother?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we didn't get into that. Yeah, she got charged with obstruction of justice because he hid a computer in her house, and she pled guilty because she just didn't want to deal with it. And she's a very sweet woman, and it's really unfair that she was. You see why Barrett was driven crazy by these people. It's because they were targeting his family.
It's your mom. Yeah.
It's your mom. Exactly.
That was actually the reason that he made the angry video, was that this FBI officer was threatening his mother.
Yeah.
And he was already kind of stressed out, and somebody threatens your mom.
Just a little.
You do kind of.
It doesn't get any more personal than that.
Exactly.
I also want to encourage people to write to Barrett. It would definitely cheer him up, because he has, a lot of free time out in Mansfield Prison. The address you can write to him is on the website at freebarrettbrown.org.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to post some links from freebarrettbrown.org on our site on the Facebook page, www.facebook.com/The Real News Crew with a Z. This is OBR.FM. Radio for the 99%, home of the horizontal democracy. Anyway, what we were talking about earlier about the update in Indonesia. I guess now there are rebels in Indonesia that are, tearing apart villages and stuff, and they're bad, and so we might need to get involved militarily. It's weird.
I got raised on Star Wars, so every time somebody says rebels, I'm like, yeah. Oh wait.
Yeah, right.
Your propaganda worked backwards on me. Sorry.
Right. If I would call the rebel forces in Syria rebels, some of my Syrian friends would get mad at me. They're like, no, they're terrorists. They're Al Qaeda.
Well, they killed all the rebels.
Al-Nusra.
The rebels were there a couple years ago. There was an actual opposition group. It just the Free Syrian Army. And
they've been pretty much run out by.
Yeah,
the real bad guys.
Yeah, now is it like the leader of Al Qaeda? They're claiming identity with Al Nusra now, so which it makes it totally more broad. And these terrorist groups are amalgamating. I mean, they're becoming. It's so ironic that we, as a country in the U.S., are funding the same forces that were supposed to be aimed against in a war on terror. And now they're amalgamating and becoming more of a prevalent force. I mean, if
you destabilize countries, what's going to happen is, people will split off into tribes and there'll be sectarian violence. And I mean, this is already a place that had a lot of volatile regions to begin with. And
right.
even Iraq, I think, is sliding into some sectarian conflict a little more now than it was before.
Yeah.
People are, there's just a lot of destabilization. And a lot of that is, some of that is our fault, and a lot of it is not our fault.
I feel like a lot of it is strategic. It's kind of the same thing we do here. It's the same thing you saw before World War II, where people are more apt to embrace fascism when they are desperate, when they're poor, and when they're destabilized.
Yeah, I mean, also like Latin America, a lot of the destabilization we did there was to benefit like banana companies and stuff. Like,
It all comes down to
whatever.
resources.
Yeah.
In South America, for the most part, it was not the bananas, although United Fruit definitely. No, but it's also, they have a lot of rare earth metals down there right now, which is why we're super mad that they've got all these effective socialist governments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's nothing. Yeah, they hate that.
Right, and just down, you have these oppressive regimes in Africa.
Absolutely.
Somalia, or they say Coney is a fraud or whatever that's all about. But I mean, it's just kind of, we're very selective about which oppressive regimes we kind of go against. I mean, because we have China, who is known for stamping out dissidents and people disappearing, and the bloody century, which you should research that if you don't know about the millions that died. You don't learn about that in school, really. When I learned that, I was blown away. And it was mostly due to dissidents. And so if we're intervening, one of the reasons we're using to drum up support for intervention in Syria is because he's a dictator and he has a police state. We have the highest incarceration rate in the world.
This is true.
Higher than China and Russia combined. And, we're best friends with China economically with through our trade and policies. I mean, it's not even that hard to see when you look around. Everything's made in China.
We imprison journalists just like China.
Exactly. And more we're becoming more and more like China, and then we just point the finger at other countries and we blame them for doing the same things that we do, that we've done. We had Agent Orange in Vietnam, white phosphorus in Iraq and Fallujah, which has been proven, but it's said to have been used in Afghanistan, which has not been proven.
Depleted uranium shells also.
Depleted uranium. Napalm. Did I already say napalm? No. I mean, these are chemical weapons that we use against people, and sometimes our own servicemen and women fall victim. And so we're guilty of the same crimes, and it's really, to me, the Syria conflict is the ultimate hypocrisy. And that's what I said when I went to Washington. That's what my sign said. It said hypocrisy. Who will strike us for the injustices that we commit?
Well, the way things are going right now, I think Russia.
I mean, isn't that what the terrorists were doing, like in 2000?
You can't say they were right. That's not allowed.
I'm not saying they're right. It's never right. Violence is like not right most of the time.
No,
but
the solution.
They have honest grievances with us.
Right. The solution to a lot of our problems would be to start behaving like a republic that people could actually respect.
Just stop shitting on all the other countries.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, I think we did a pretty good job at
All right.
Kept it down to 2.
keeping it PG.
Yep.
Or PG-13.
That's pretty good for me.
Yeah.
We can't help it. We're from the internet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, free Barrett.
Yeah, free Barrett Brown.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies, for coming on the show. And we'll be back next week on Tuesday at 9:30, same time, here on The Real News at www.obr.fm. You can listen, and we also have other shows on obr.fm. Occupied Nation, it's on Thursdays from 7 to 10. It's a great show. And we have Bob on Mondays with Veterans for Peace. It's another great one. We talk about all the stories that are buried or distorted by the corporate media. You can listen to us on Sirius XM satellite radio if you have the internet radio option enabled. You could also listen to us on Shoutcast, on Winamp under the Revolution category. So that's going to do it for tonight's episode of The Real News. I will leave you with the cancer cocktail this week. It is Dove products. Out of most of the cosmetic products that you'll find in the shelves at CVS or, major retailers, Dove is one of the worst offenders when it comes to carcinogens. So you want to check that out. And we will post links for you on the Facebook page. And again, thanks for tuning in. One of the most important things we have and what keeps us going is our listeners. So go ahead and like the Facebook page. The more you like and share our links, the more visibility we have. So we're all about the truth here on The Real News. And we want to make journalism and the mainstream more truth-based. So good night, America.